Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And we're really excited today. We love talking with directors. And today we have director Amy Forrest here with us. And Amy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited because you have had a great little run here in my world, at least. You got Christmas on Fifth Avenue, Santa's Got Style, We're Scrooged. I mean, pretty fun.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate all the support from Hallmarkies over the last couple of
Yeah.
years. It's been fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fun when I was emailing you. You're like, yeah, I totally have been following everything because you never know, like if people even have any idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll talk more about Christmas on Fifth Avenue, especially. But it's your first time on the podcast. Let's get to know you a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what inspired you to become a director.
I started, I guess, in kind of like film world, I guess, back in university. I was taking some acting classes and I decided to take a screenwriting class. And I think I was always interested in those two things, actually,
Uh-huh.
in particular. And I still didn't pursue that for a long time. I went to grad school for journalism. I
Oh
did a
wow.
different route, but I think that the storytelling aspect was always there.
Mm-hmm.
With the journalism, with writing, and then when I graduated, I tried to do some acting work, and that was okay, and it went fine for a little while, nothing too major, and I decided I wanted to get into kind of another position in film to
Mm-hmm.
to compensate for acting, and so I got into script supervising and
Okay.
duty on set, and then I worked very consistently at that for a number of years. And, after sitting next to the director day in, day out, was like, you know what, I think I could do that job. And I think I'd like to. And I was fortunate enough to work with a company that was really big on kind of like startups,
Uh-huh.
and growing up new talent. And they gave me a chance to
Uh-huh.
shadow and to direct. And then it just kind of evolved from there. So
Yeah.
I was directing as a very kind of organic progression,
Uh-huh.
brought
Yeah.
in these different parts and different experiences. Yeah.
So you didn't actually go to film school. You were just taking classes and things like that?
Yeah, did not go to film
Hmm.
school at all. I did, like a weekend intensive in script supervising and was thrown in
Uh-huh.
and really essentially learned filmmaking just by being on set. So
Uh-huh.
yeah.
So did you grow up with a love of movies? A
I
passion for
did.
movies?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, my parents were pretty like restrictive in what we could watch when I was a kid.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of what I watched was like old movies, like the old
Hmm.
musicals and things like that. So,
Yeah.
loved like White Christmas and
Yeah.
Chitty Bang Bang and like all these, even like Bye Bye Birdie with Anne Mark,
Uh-huh.
these old kind of classics. So I think that some of that style and that kind of like romantic inclination has really kind of like stayed with me in my career now. So.
Hmm. That makes sense because there's really that Santa's Got Style especially has sort of those screwball comedy kind of elements to it.
Yes, yeah, oh, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, that
Hmm.
was I think that movie was really, I mean, there was some comedic stuff in the first movie I ever did was called Dashing Home for Christmas. And there was
Hmm.
comedy stuff in that, but I think Santa's Got Style was my first experience in really getting to dive into that. And
Hmm.
and I had a lot of fun, and I think I it helped me to realize that I do have kind of an aptitude for comedy, and I
Uh-huh.
whereas I think before I had really realized that yet. So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
very,
So so you were already working as a script supervisor. Was that at Brain Power
yeah.
that you're okay? Yeah, yeah. And they've just been crushing it lately. I mean, if I hear they're behind a film, I'm like, okay, I'll probably enjoy it.
Oh my gosh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I
So
I don't know how many films they have done personally, but yeah, they've
yeah,
made quite a few. Yeah.
yeah. So how did you end up getting in the job as the script supervisor?
So it was just a cold call. I was still working a part-time job at the time, and I had done some volunteering at the Canadian Film Center, and somebody who had worked there was working for Brain Power and needed a script supervisor, so they called me up out of the blue, and then
Hmm.
kind of was working for them ever since. So
Yeah, yeah. Were you a holiday movie watcher? Were you were you where you
yeah,
started?
but once again, more in the classics kind of
Uh-huh.
the old movies.
Uh-huh.
I definitely was not a MOW
Yeah.
uh, movie watcher. I definitely watch, It's a Wonderful Life and Christmas in Connecticut, and It Happened on Fifth Avenue, and all these kind of
Yeah.
style movies. I mean, every year my dad, it was like tradition. We always watched the 1950s Christmas Carol with Alistair Sim.
Oh, so good.
Christmas Eve every year. That's what we watched.
Outstanding. Yeah. That
Yeah.
one's really, really good. Yeah, it's interesting. So one of my friends was asking me the other day about like why Christmas got so wrapped up into romance. He's like, it's about a baby, like what the like on the surface, and like the Santa Claus part of it's for children. Like, why is it like become this romantic holiday? And I thought it was an interesting question. I was like, I don't know. It's cold outside. You want to be cozy, I guess.
Yeah. I think there's that. I don't know. I think it's because both of those things have magic to them.
Uh-huh.
There's something about the whether it's religious based or not, but the idea of Christmas has this inherent magicalness,
Yeah.
this feeling. And I think when we all are in our most romantic selves, when we think about falling in love and those love stories, there's something that is beyond us that's a part of it, and I think that's where those two things meet.
Yeah, and I suppose also since you're giving and exchanging gifts, that kind of has can have a romantic uh the connotation to it, maybe. That might
Yeah,
help.
yeah, I remember hearing once about that. I think it was during like a Christmas service somewhere, and it was something about how like we are gifts to each other.
Hmm.
And I incorporated that idea actually into that first Christmas movie that I did, Dashing Home for Christmas, where I think she even has a line of dialogue where she says that, like, that the idea of Christmas from a holiday standpoint is that like we are these gifts to each other, and that's also
Yeah.
what is in a romantic way too.
Yeah. Well, so Dashing Home for Christmas, I mean, it must have been pretty intimidating though. I mean, to if you had never directed before.
Yeah, so I had that was my first movie, but I had actually directed before. I started on a TV series called The Wedding Planner.
Oh. Oh, yeah. Oh, so
Mm,
is that where you met Catherine and Olivia?
yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did that was my very, very first kind of, sink or swim moment. So
Uh-huh.
I did a episode 2 of that series, and went on to do the last 2 of that season. And that the season finale is what Catherine's in. So
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, because now you've done 3 films with her, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And she's one of our favorites. We just love her so much.
Yeah.
And I mean, her and Olivia had so much chemistry in Christmas on Fifth Avenue. I mean, it was tricky because that I mean, it's enemies to lovers, but keeping everybody just likable enough and keeping her away from being too much of the manic pixie dream girl. That there were a lot of minefields that movie could have fallen into that it didn't. And I don't know, was that something you were kind of aware of and thinking about?
Yes, we had talked a lot about that fine line of making, even with him, still a likable character. He's supposed to be,
Uh-huh.
going time and suffering kind of internally, but it was this and pushing her away,
Yeah.
but really be like he needs to be still, um,
Hmm.
a good guy and someone that
Yeah.
we want her to be with, and
Yeah.
can see why that she that what she sees in him, but without that kind of grouchy hard to get close to exterior, there would be no
Yeah.
conflict and no tension. So it's a
Right.
very, very specific line you walk, and for sure that she had to also still have a bit of pushback against that, right? She can't just come and go, I don't care how you treat me, I'm just going to be sunny all over the place. It's like, no, she had to have her own boundaries. That was very
Yeah.
important. And
Yeah, that's what kept her from being the manic pixie dream girl, is that she still had her own, she didn't exist only for him. She still had her own dreams and desires and things like that. And you know, had moments where she was frustrated and you know, it's a very tricky movie on a lot of levels, because they're all just in this one apartment the whole time, which I think is tricky. I mean, in a way, it was just the movie that we needed for that year. Uh, but you know, it's a tough dynamic to make. I mean, you really do have to rely on the chemistry of these two, and they were so good.
Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch-alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind-the-scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
The chemistry.
yes. Oh my gosh, yes. And different, they are different actors, types of actors for sure. Olivier is extremely intense in a good way.
Yeah.
He really wants to get into the, you know, inside that character and figure out the emotional background between everything.
Yeah.
And he and I had a lot of fun, like getting really into that. And Catherine just has this effortless, natural chemistry on camera. She just lights up, right?
Yeah. She's like a real life Ava.
Yeah, she is, right? And so I think in a way the two of them, it complemented. They're different, but it actually complemented each other, even just like performance wise, right? Like she helped him just be a little more in the moment and maybe bogged down by some of these ideas and you know, and maybe he inspired her to dig, you know, deeper into some of those psychological aspects. And so one of the things that was really fun actually that I did with Olivier was in the movie he has this little notebook, and I think it only shows up like one time in the movie, but early on in prep I'd had a call with him and I'd said, do you write personally? And he's like, yeah, you know, sometimes. I was like, I want you to buy a little pocket notebook and I want you to start writing in it as you, not as the character, just as you, things, and then bring it to set every day. And he was like, okay. And so we, you know, we had done a few days on set already, and he had this book in his pocket, and I still hadn't really told him what was going on with it. We got to the scene where Catherine first kind of like she first gets entrance into his sanctuary, his right, always before trying to close the door on her when she's bringing him food and everything. He finally comes in, and I'd really worked hard to make that like feel like his safe space that he shows nobody. So right before we shot that scene, I went, Olivier, do you have that notebook? And he's like, okay. And he brings it out. And then I was like, can I have it? And he's like, okay. And he gives it to me, and I just like open it in front of him and start reading it. And he's just sitting there kind of, you know, and it's like, there's personal stuff in there. And then I close it and I just go, how you felt right now is how I want you to feel in this scene. Let's
my
go.
gosh.
And he was just like, what?
No wonder he nailed it. I mean, perfect. Oh, I love hearing that, because I mean, I just loved the dynamic between the two of them and how his heart slowly melts, by the end. And I mean, it's a tricky thing because usually the such a quick romance isn't going to be accepted by the audience. But I was just so invested in the two of them. I was completely fine with it. I was completely fine with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that is very smart. That strategy. That's good. So did you read the book before filming the movie, or did you
No,
stick to the script?
just stick to the script. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's a good book too. It's steamier book.
Yes. I have read one of the other ones before, and I was like,
Okay.
look at all the sex in here. I was like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that's what we're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
doing.
I mean the when she tells him that she's in love with him and he like puts her hands down and he's like no, and you're just like the look on his face, you're just, I mean, oh, you feel so sad.
Yeah.
And then I love that whole conversation he has with his mom, and and that I'm what does he say? I'm hopelessly in love with her or something like that. And but I've ruined it all. I ruined it all, and I don't know. I just loved it. It was so good.
Yeah. No, yeah. Olivier is like, well, he's such a sweetheart. And when I
Yeah.
first started working with him, he was very new to acting on that TV series.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I don't know really how much he'd done before. And he has such an interesting background. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've him about he was in like Cirque du Soleil and can
Hmm.
speak 5 languages, and
Yeah.
he's a crazy interesting person.
Yeah.
And it's really great to see him really like blossom as an actor,
Yeah.
and so far in such a short amount of time.
Well, he has that like piercing look,
Yeah.
that the great particular, I usually say it's a British piercing look, but that in your great Jane Austen adaptations, things like that yeah, leaves you weak in the knees, right? And
Yes, I call it the smolder.
yeah, the
That's my
smolder. That's a good word for it.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, was it something you were worried about as far as the ending of like, okay, it's going to be too fast a relationship?
Um, I mean, I think most of these movies, like you said, feel that way and have that kind of element to them. And I think that as a genre, we've kind of in a way come to accept that that's how things go a little bit. So I think there is a little bit of like suspension of that belief inherent in this genre. But it is interesting because that is something we talk about a lot, is the proposal, the mandatory proposal, or not. Do we just end the story of them getting together, or do we need to have a ring?
Hmm.
And sometimes it actually comes down to just being a network
Yeah.
preference. To be honest, it becomes
Uh-huh.
that, you know, A
But
plus.
I love the proposal. I've never heard of a proposal of go in there, pick out whichever ring you want, and wear it for the rest of your life. Oh,
Yeah.
it was so good. It was great.
Oh my gosh, that day shooting, that was one of the toughest days that I have ever had on set. When we shot that scene, it
Because it
was
was like torrential downpour, right?
yeah, it was freezing. It was not, it was in May or something. It shouldn't
Yeah.
have been cold. It was like 2 degrees and freezing rain, and it was just awful. And I mean, the actors just like, they really toughed it out being out there. But I remember in that scene being like, where's the line between, giving them an umbrella and just embracing it? And we're just trying to fight through all that rain. But yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. Well, it paid off because I just thought it was a really interesting way to do a proposal. Go in there, pick whichever one you want out, wear it for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And it had a bit of like a breakfast at Tiffany's kind of feel to
Mm-hmm. It
that whole,
did. Yeah, which is one of my favorites. So that was perfect. And I just felt like their relationship built so organically. I got so invested in the two of them. Again, the chemistry was so good. And I do think there was something that was kind of COVID-y about the movie, that the two of them in this apartment it's kind of stuck in this apartment. I think there was something about it that even at that time, especially, rang true.
Yeah, the difficulties in sharing a space, right? With
Yes. Yeah.
people used to having their own
Mhm.
and that have very different energies. I mean, I think the best example of that is when she's cooking and baking, right? In the morning,
Yeah.
just kind of what is going on, what's with the music, what's with,
Yeah.
and it's that negotiation that we have to
Mhm.
when we are confined.
He's like, what are you doing? What's going on? Yeah. I
Kids,
loved it. I think it's one of the finest TV rom-coms I've covered on this pod.
oh, thank you.
Absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And so then Santa's Got Style again with Catherine.
Yeah.
And this one must have been a little bit intimidating in the sense it's just such a silly premise. But I
Yeah.
think that the silliness of the premise really kind of made it work because you
Mhm.
just kind of had to be with it from the beginning and go with it and then just laugh and enjoy it. And I mean, the idea that she wouldn't recognize her best friend
I know.
because he has a beard on is totally ridiculous, but it worked. It cracked me up. I enjoyed it because it was so silly.
Yeah, I think you're bang on it because we definitely
Mhm.
many discussions about that as well as like what it's one thing from the script, okay, but then what does he really look like, right, as styling Santa? Like how big is that difference? Would she recognize him? How is he hot? But Santa, it's like two different two different things you're putting together into one. But I think you're right. I think you just had to just go with it from the beginning, and that just made it all the more fun. And we just like went all the way with the montages of him walking through the store and all that, and just leaned into the
Mhm.
kind of, like you said, screwballness of
Yeah.
that.
Well, and I think what makes Franco so great is that you expect somebody like that's as handsome as he is to be a little bit like hockey, a little bit whatever. No, he's like the most humble, sweet guy. And so, I mean, because on the surface, the idea of this beautiful man getting friend zoned is just absolutely ridiculous. Like, what? But he's just so sweet that it works.
Yeah, and Franco's great too because he really wanted to get into the that there's kind of there's different sides to him, right? But so in a way he can be his somewhat of his real self around her when he is styling Santa, and that every time he's himself and she comes up to talk to him, he can't, like he's too nervous, and that's where his true self can't come out, and that's why she doesn't get a chance to fall in love with him because he's too nervous to really just let go. One of the examples we had talked about was Joe in like the original like South Park. Whenever he'd like see the girl that he liked, he'd just throw up immediately and he wouldn't be able to speak. And so we talked about that kind of feeling that he would get anytime she came around.
Uh-huh. Yeah. 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 I mean, there was just like an awkwardness to him that was very endearing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, fine line between, that awkwardness and still believability, right?
Uh-huh.
That
Yeah.
he is this beautiful man, with confidence. I think he runs a successful business and
Uh-huh.
he has friends and family and things, but
Yeah.
something about her that just disables him.
Well, and Brian Sills was so hilarious in the movie as this police officer, this mall cop, whatever.
Yeah.
Did what was that? Working with him.
It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we had a lot of fun together. The scene where um he's on to him about like the Santa disguise, and he goes into the washroom and he's like looking around, and he like goes into the stall and he finds the bag with his clothes in it.
Yeah.
And so we were shooting that, and for whatever reason, it was a very small space, and we had the camera, kind of like pointing up, like crammed next to where the toilet is, where the bag that he discovers it in, and then we put the camera in the bag actually at one point. This is the shot actually.
Uh-huh.
He opens it, you see him through the bag, and I was standing like right crunched next to it in the stall because there wasn't any other people on the camera team to be there.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just standing next to it, and he's going through like a million versions of opening and just ad-libbing all this like ridiculousness. And I'm standing there just like the whole time, just like don't laugh. Like it was so difficult because there's like versions with him with the flashlight in his mouth. And I was like, he's a genius, yeah, with that creative stuff. It makes it so fun because you can just bounce ideas and try different things. And yeah, he's great.
Well, he told me he lived for getting Franco to break. And he said that Catherine never did, hardly ever break.
Yeah.
But he was
she's stoned.
Yeah. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's The Trouble with Mistletoe by Jennifer Snow. It is the first of the Brook Hollow series. In best-selling author Jennifer Snow's sweet, wholesome Christmas romance, The Trouble with Mistletoe, our heroine learns that you can't say no to a mistletoe kiss, no matter who's under it. Since leaving Brook Hollow and her fiancé Luke Dawson 12 years earlier, Victoria Mason hasn't looked back. She's traded the small-town dream of marriage, kids, and family Christmas dinners for late nights working at a high-powered acquisitions firm, lunches at trendy New York restaurants, and jet-setting vacations on the slopes. So her latest work assignment to acquire Brook Hollow's sporting goods store poses a challenge for Victoria in more ways than one, because it's almost Christmas and she's got other holiday plans, and the owner is reluctant to sell, and the owner is Luke. She needs to wrap up the deal before she gets caught up in her old life and her old love, or becomes trapped under the mistletoe again. You can find The Trouble with the Mistletoe by Jennifer Snow wherever you purchase your holiday reads, or use the affiliate link in the description below. It was just a really enjoyable film. Silly, fun. I loved it.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then we're Scrooged. I mean, this was like a little bit, I feel like this one was a little more ambitious as far as what was required of you as a director.
Yeah. So this one had a lot of more magical elements to it. Some kind of like fantasy things going on, which required a lot of effects. And I tried from the beginning to do as much of it practically as we could. And it was a lot of fun because I hadn't done too much of that before. And I had pretty good amount of prep going into this movie. So it allowed me to do a lot of research and to do some pre-biz on how we were going to do, accomplish all the split screens and the body doubles and things like that. And it just started with me at home with calling my actor friend over in my iPhone to just do some mock-up to do this stuff, and even the spin transitions and all this stuff. I worked through all of that alone in my apartment, and showed my team and to everybody so everyone knows what's going on. And then it worked beautifully. I think one of the scenes that I was most happy with and didn't really require any post, or really next to nothing, was the high school science classroom scene where they see themselves as younger kids in the foreground of the shot, and that split screen worked so well. And then as well as the wide shot, there's a tighter shot where we rack focus from the foreground of Andrew speaking, but we actually hear his voice from his current self in the background, and the focus racks across the split. So that's something that's a real old school effects thing to do. I got that from Back to the Future, actually. And we just did it in camera, and it timed out and worked really well. So
wow, that must have been intimidating, just all these new techniques and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, you know what? I feel like getting into filmmaking every step of the way is intimidating, and just do it. Like my first day directing, first, time talking to actors.
Yeah.
Everything is intimidating, and that's part of the job. And if you want to keep growing and learning, then you're going to have to saddle up to that.
Yeah. Was that fun with working with particularly Andrew doing the evil Scott?
Oh my gosh. I think that whole section was where I did have the most fun with them, because I
Uh-huh.
really, the two of them, I thought they did a fantastic job of going into this like dark place.
Yeah.
And I think they really relished that opportunity to like act with themselves, right? In a way. And yeah, and Scott's moment when he takes the drink and he goes, "It's better than being alone." I was like, oh,
Yeah.
fuck, I love it, and I think, yeah, I don't think they typically would,
Yeah.
get chances
Yeah.
much often to
Well,
do.
especially because Andrew's just so freaking charming.
I know.
He's so great. I love him. I really am a big fan of his. And so he's just so nice that I doubt he is called upon to play villains that often. So it was I'm sure very fun.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And
Yeah.
Andrew was, yeah, and Andrew's another person that I, worked with on wedding planners as well, way back when I
Uh-huh.
started, and also he had a role in Dashing Home for Christmas as well, my first.
Oh, he did? I
Yes.
forgot that. Yeah. He's great.
Yeah. Oh,
The,
he's so
yeah.
sweet, funny.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And it was nice too, this one, because they actually made the Scrooge archetype characters actual Scrooges. Because the last couple takes on Christmas Carol that Hallmark has done, it's been such weak sauce. I mean, they had one where literally the Cratchit character is begging to keep working for her. Like she wasn't mean at all. Like, and it's just like it kind of ruins the story a little bit. Like you need, in order for the redemption to be meaningful, you need for it to be a redemption. You need it to be, and like they're just so afraid to have characters be unlikable for 5 seconds that
Yeah.
it's frustrating. And whereas this, like, I mean, she at the very beginning, you could tell she's a bad person at the beginning because she ignores a bell ringing Santa. She just
Yeah.
walks right by.
Right there, Yeah.
Yeah, that's the big tell for sure, which was really funny.
I think, yeah, no, I think you bring up actually a really good point in general for these movies, and the kind of Ebenezer Scrooge story
Yeah,
is a great example of that, because we all know that character, and like you said, if they don't start off as, somewhat cold at heart, then what's the point of watching the movie, right? And
yeah,
where's the story? Um, and I and that was another discussion that we had about her character, and how to make us believe that there's hope, for her from the beginning. I think there was that concern that she can't come across just completely mean and cold-hearted, and that's
uh-huh,
why I introduced the element of her necklace early on.
uh-huh,
She still wears it. We see that she still, uses it in her moments of, contemplation, but we don't learn necessarily what that is until a little bit later on. And that's kind of our little sign of hope, I guess, that there is something that she hasn't quite given up on yet.
mm, yeah,
Um, but I think that whole problem of the lead female character in these movies having to be likable from the beginning, and people being afraid of them not being likable, or them having some sort of flaw, is something I've talked about, in a lot of these movies, because the whole essence of a film, right, is watching that hero's journey at, at a
yeah,
very simple level. Someone has to start at one point, and you watch them change. They go through some series of events that leads them to become a different person by the end, hopefully a better person, usually a better person.
yeah,
And that's why we watch them. But there is this feeling with MOWs and, Hallmark style movies, that the female has to be amazing from the beginning. We have to identify with them. They have to be aspirational. We have to like everything about them, and it always handcuffs those stories into then being stuck in a world where, well, like, where do they go then?
yeah,
And sometimes I've found that because of that, it ends up being that the male character, the love interest, sometimes has more of an arc and more of a story, because they're allowed to be the one that has some
yeah.
issue, some problem, or something that's keeping them from being together in the beginning, that they can then get over by the end.
Yeah,
And
if that's so interesting you said that, because I did a whole presentation before Up the TV in Lifetime the last year, about what women want from
mm,
these Christmas rom-com. And what I said is people think they're all about the women because the lead characters are women, but that's not true. It is probably more about the swoon-worthy guys. That lean into the swoon-worthy guys. And because if you think about like romance novels, like they're obviously made for women, but the big, who is it? Like Fabio and things like it's the men. That's
Yeah.
what that's why people read them. It's not because of the women. And I use the example of both Virgin River and Bridgerton. Both of those, it's all about the men. It's not about the women because they're based on romance novels.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I remember having this conversation around the time I was talking about the smolder, right? And I was there with the a male director that I had learned from, that it's Justin, that's done like a whole bunch of these movies, and he was kind of like, the what? And I was like, the smolder. It's like, it's where they kind of, it's the kind of lean down, look up, like it's cowboy, right? It's the cowboy looking under. That's the feeling. That's the leading man kind of thing. And I think in that moment, there was this kind of awareness that he doesn't see things necessarily the same way I do. And I think that's, I can use that to my advantage in telling these stories. And for instance, there's so many different ways you can shoot romance scene. And I just wrapped shooting a couple new MOWs for next year. They're non-season. The Love Club series.
Oh, okay.
And we talked a lot about like these movies are, for straight women, right? Like
they're fantasies.
And I purposely, dove into this in one movie about a suburban dad fantasy of like the suburban dad washing his car. And people are like, why are we making such a big deal of this? And I said, because like, remember who's watching, right? And even things like when two actors, have their big kiss moment, right? And there's often a lot of discussion about, what side that they kiss on, so that you feature one of the actors more than the other, just because you tilt your head when you kiss.
Right.
And there's, generally a thing of we want to see the woman be, she's beautiful and all this stuff. But I was like, yeah, but I don't. I want to see the guy.
Yes. See, this is why your movies are so good. You understand. You get it. Yes. Yes. The swoon-worthy guy is what we're like. I mean, all three of these are going to be Andrew Bouchel, Franco, and Olivier. I mean, great leads. I love all three of them so much. I'll watch anything that they're in.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Fun having, and especially with Franco. So I worked with Franco on a movie called 14 Love Letters. I don't know if you've seen that. Yeah. And he works on like a farm, and he's got he's always working on a tractor, and he's got, the real like quintessential all-American man kind of thing with his t-shirts. There's this one shot where he like gets out of his truck. He goes around to play chess with his buddy, and he's and the way the level of the camera is when he gets out of the truck, we follow his little jean butt over to the thing.
Yes.
I mean, I know that's objectifying a little bit, but hey, we've been the out of that forever. So
hey, we need it. And so little of quality is made for women these days, with women in mind, trying to please women. And it's interesting because you look at and this is what I had in my presentation. I talked about that the romance genre is practically saving publishing right now. I mean, it is a huge seller compared to everybody else, and it's because there's just not a lot of quality content made for women and to make women happy. And that a lot of times that's kind of viewed as with derision. If like, I mean, I was just thinking about that today. That somebody was saying, oh, it's like somebody was criticizing a movie and saying, oh, it's like a soap opera. And I'm like, I really wish we could stop doing that. That I understand what they're trying to say when they say that. Yeah. But what you're really, that it's, I don't know, it's just like so dismissive of like an entire genre, an entire like way of telling stories is that, oh, it's like soap. That's just like inherently terrible. Well, why
Yeah.
do people for decades and decades, why were people tuning in? Why do people love it? What do people love about those stories? Or are they just, is it just completely, I guess like the thing that makes me annoyed is just completely worthless. The people acting like it's completely worthless. And you see it all the time with Hallmark movies too. People will be like, oh, it's like a Hallmark movie. And I remember when Coda was getting the big, push for Best Picture, I heard so many people that like weren't into it. Oh, it's like a Hallmark movie. Like, screw you.
Yeah. I mean, so
There's
popular. My mom watch
there's-
All My Children every day.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
some good ones. There's a good, like, don't just dismiss an entire genre like
Sure.
that. It really annoys me.
Well, and I think on our side of things,
Yeah.
even in the making of it, you hear that a lot, amongst crew, amongst, when we're making the movies is,
Uh-huh.
it's just Nema,
Yeah.
right? It's not a real movie or something. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the attitude it is. And I think that, and I think it's only kind of hurting ourselves to think of it that way. I mean, I go into every movie that I make and I think of, this, I try and go into it and go, this could be the best movie I ever.
Mhm.
And, I set that bar, for myself and I put everything into it. I don't see it as part of, it's in this box or this is the expectations and that's as much as I can do with it. I try and make them as cinematic as possible. I give them the respect that I think they deserve as stories first. It's just all about the story. And sometimes when people go into it with this limited framework, I think it's not necessary.
And you can feel it. I mean, I can say that, I mean, especially these three films just gave me so much joy and made me so happy. I can even tell you how many times I watched Christmas on Fifth Avenue. I love that movie so much. And I mean, it's pretty rare. So I saw the movie but I didn't see it in enough time to interview before the movie came out. And a lot of times then it just won't be worth it, because like for the talent, it won't be worth it because they're trying to promote their film or whatever. But I just loved it so much that I messaged the people it up and I was like, I really want to talk to these two. So I had Olivia and Catherine on, and I'm telling you, if they had told me that they were a couple in real life, I would have believed them. That's how good their chemistry was. Like even off screen, like just so dynamic and palpable, as you're interviewing and so that was just incredible and super fun and I just the connection between the two of them, you just really cared about these two and wanted them to be happy, wanted them to be together, and so yeah, really enjoyed Lucas and Eve and Eva. You just wanted them to be happy, and when she's sad, you're just, I love that whole scene at the opera or
At the ballet,
yeah, it's so good. I mean, she looks stunning, and then the way he looks at her,
Oh yeah, no,
unbelievable.
I loved that moment too. I remember when we were shooting that of them in the box, and it again that my reference for that was Pretty Woman, the opera. That's probably why you said opera, maybe.
Yeah, or Moonstruck, kind of maybe think Moonstruck, which
So
I
she's
love.
so taken right by what she's seeing, and then that energy about her is what like he sees that beauty in her. Right? He's so taken with her. It's such a beautiful moment. I remember that when we were shooting that just for fun, and it was early on in the shoot, so I think they were maybe still a little bit like getting each other and the set and everything. But as soon as we finished shooting that, I was like, okay, and now just for fun, let's do like what are their names from the Muppet Show? Like the two old men that always sit in the
I guess Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah, and do their little like grumbly things. So they're probably like, please don't make us do this. But I made them just like do their best impressions and like make fun of like everybody on set and everything, and just like sit there and laugh. And it was hilarious. I wish I could have added to the credits, but
we'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/hallmarkies.
Where Santa's Got Style, was it hard to, because you have to shoot all these scenes, some of them with the beard, some of them without the beard, and like keeping it all together, because to us it flows so well. You can just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, but obviously it's not shot that way. So is that tricky at all?
Yes. And so that was a lot of time was spent in prep with the schedule to work around that, because that hair and makeup change would have been pretty significant.
Sure. Yeah.
Or something. So we definitely had to work out ways to, if we're in one location and he has to appear in that scene as both people, how to shoot one part of that scene and then shoot something else while we're waiting for him to make that change. So
you made this, so you shot it in, because I figured you probably had a whole day with bearded Santa, but you switched back and forth.
We would try as much as we can to do all bearded Santa on one day, but if we're not able, like if we only have a location for one day, we can't come back, right? So we're gonna have to do on the same day, and that we tried to keep to a minimum because it does time, but we work our magic with schedule and sneak other scenes in between and trying to make the most of our time. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, we like to end our interviews with some fun questions, holiday questions. So you ready? So first question, what is your favorite holiday drink?
I think just like a classic eggnog, rum and eggnog. With some
good.
Yep.
What is your favorite holiday cookie or treat?
Shortbread cookies. My mom always made bread when I was a kid, and she, I think, still has the same cookie cutter shapes. So I that, and
it was so cute. Brian Sills, when he was on the pod, he was talking about his mom's shortbread that she makes for Christmas, and then she emailed us after with her recipe. She's like, my son went on your podcast. Which was really cute. And we had Jasmine, one of our co-hosts, made those. They look really good. I got to make them. But that was so cute. She's like, I'm so proud of my son being on your podcast. So what is your favorite Christmas song or carol?
Favorite Christmas song or carol? I feel like it changes so much. I have to, and you know what? We haven't really got into, I haven't been places too much lately where they're playing them. And that's like, reminds you of you know what? It's kind of a sad one, and it's only very subtly Christmas, but Joni Mitchell's River.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've got mail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's,
yeah, and that's a good one. Okay, what is your favorite classic Christmas movie? Since you grew up watching the classics.
I think yeah, I like different ones for different reasons, but I think I still have to go with It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah,
I remember just so because as a kid, at the end part when his brother toasts him and says, to the richest guy in town or something.
Yeah,
to always get like shivers at that part because it was so such a long journey for him to come to the place of realizing the abundance that he did have in his life. So
the most festive suicide movie ever made. But it's really good. Merry Christmas, movie house. Merry Christmas. All right. Which do you like better, Scrooge or the Grinch?
Scrooge.
Okay. Which do you like better, clear lights or colored?
Colored.
Would you rather be in a snowball fight or build a snowman?
Mm-hmm. Build a snowman and then turn into a snowball fight.
Okay, good. Would you consider yourself a good gift wrapper or not?
I'm excellent gift wrapper.
Oh, okay, good. All right, last question. Do you have an ugly Christmas sweater?
I do. I think it has like a reindeer's butt on it or something.
Oh, okay, good. Well, very good. You did it. Answered all the questions. We'll be so excited to watch all of your new movies coming up that you were talking about. So that's going to be fun. And I don't know if you have social media or anything you want to share.
Just my Instagram. You can follow me. It's just Amy Force.
Great.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll have that in the description, and you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. Check that out. Also, make sure you're following the podcast, Hallmarkies Pod, Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us a lot. If you're watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and check out our Patreon, where you get a chance to be a part of Q&As and watch-alongs. We had, in fact, we had Catherine on a couple months ago where we watched Christmas on Fifth Avenue. We got all the behind-the-scenes details. So fun. Yeah, it was super fun. And then also we have our merch store, which has some fun festive designs. So take a look at that. And thanks so much. We'll talk to you all later. Bye.